Greetings, nerds. I come to you with a message from the future, where humans and machines have merged to become one. Please stay tuned for the message. Message to commence in 3, 2, 1. It's not breaking news that we've become exponentially more reliant upon and integrated with technology in the last 20 years. Pretty much everyone has a smartphone, and a lot of people even have wearable technology like my smartwatch right here. But all over the world, there's a group of people that want to take this to the next level by becoming one with technology. And no, I'm not talking about the Illuminati.
We shall feast on the blood of your children.
Today, we're talking about biohacking and transhumanism. Transhumanism is a philosophical movement where people believe that they should be able to use technology to enhance the human condition, and that our integration with technology is the next step forward in human evolution. And biohackers are a group of people who have adopted a DIY ethos when it comes to enhancing their bodies. From using CRISPR and genetic engineering techniques to implanting small electrical devices inside their bodies that let them interact with the world in a whole new way. Some of the more popular implants include RFID NFC transponders used for identification and access control. Some people install small magnets into their fingertips, which are said to give the user an almost sixth sense, allowing them to detect nearby electromagnetic fields and do the occasional party trick. There's even an implant that allows users to detect true north. These people are literally turning themselves into cyborgs. And today, I'll join their ranks and take my first step to living life as a cyborg. I'm going to be getting an RFID NFC injectable implant in my hand that I purchased from a company called Dangerous Things. I'm going to discuss how the device works, what I can do with it, and I'll even go over some of the common misconceptions about this technology that I really feel need to be cleared up. And finally, I'm going to sit down with Amal Graafstra, the founder of Dangerous Things, and discuss what goes into making these devices and what his plans are for the future. So, let's talk about RFID NFC. RFID stands for Radio Frequency Identification, and NFC stands for Near Field Communication. These technologies are based upon the same principles, but have some key differences in their applications. Essentially, both are methods of transmitting data wirelessly over short distances using magnetic fields. Both systems use a transmitter and a receiver consisting of a microchip and an antenna that's tuned to a particular frequency. RFID uses a low frequency of 125 kilohertz, while NFC uses the higher frequency at 13.56 megahertz. When an RFID or NFC tag comes within a certain distance of the reader, the electromagnetic field emitted by the reader interacts with the tag, generating a small electric current, which is just enough to power the chip and transmit data back to the reader. RFID is generally used for things like inventory management or access control. If you have to scan a badge to get into the building at work, that's most likely RFID. NFC is technically a subset of RFID that can also be used for access control, but also has many other potential applications. Most NFC are capable of storing small amounts of data on them, usually somewhere in the range of 1 kilobyte. Some NFC tags are even capable of complex encryption so that they can be used for more secure applications. The little chip in your credit card or debit card is the perfect example of this, as well as other contactless payment options like Google or Apple Pay. So, now that we know a little bit more about the technology, let's talk about some of the questions I've got or misconceptions I've heard about RFID or my decision to get this implant. I find that, as with most things, many of the fears or questions here generally stem from a lack of understanding of how the technology works, so I feel like this is an important discussion to have. So, the first and most obvious question is, why? Well, if it isn't 100% obvious already, I'm a giant nerd and I love tech. But if that isn't a good enough reason, a lot of it boils down to convenience and the fact that I am ridiculously scatterbrained. The implant I'm getting will essentially serve as a programmable key. I have plans to use it as my work badge and also to set up access control and potentially replace the ignition in my truck so that they can work with it. This means no more lost keys and one less hunk of crap in my pocket. The next comment I usually hear is, "It works on radio frequencies. Aren't you afraid of getting cancer?" Absolutely not. First of all, I'm more likely to get cancer or some other strange disease from any number of the strange and usually untested chemicals I work with on a daily basis as a chemist. Secondly, we're surrounded by radio frequencies every day, and they don't affect us. Why? Because they're what's known as non-ionizing radiation. If we take a look at the electromagnetic spectrum, you'll see it's broken up into several sections. Right in the middle is visible light, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. As we lower the frequency, we get into infrared light, microwaves, and radio waves, all of which are invisible to the human eye. The lower frequency also means lower energy. Electromagnetic waves in this range don't have enough energy to ionize or remove electrons from a molecule. Sure, if these waves are concentrated enough, like in a high-power infrared laser, they can still cause problems, but this is more related to thermal energy transfer. In other words, you might get burnt, but no harm on the molecular level. When it comes to cancer and mutagenic effects, it's the other side of the spectrum that we need to worry about. UV light, X-rays, and gamma rays. These frequencies carry much more energy and have the potential for causing biological mutations and even lead to cancer if exposed in large enough quantities. So, can the government track me? Well, yeah, but that has nothing to do with the implant. I'm sorry, but if you're worried about the government or anyone else tracking you, then you probably shouldn't be on YouTube right now. In fact, you should go ahead and throw away your phone, your computer, and anything else that connects to the internet, because that's how they'd be doing it. As for the implant, RFID is not synonymous with GPS, and the two technologies are not related. Also, RFID implants are what's known as passive devices, which means there's no battery and there's no power source. The only way that they're activated is by holding a reader emitting the correct frequency directly against my hand. And if you've gotten close enough to do that, I'm pretty sure you already know where I'm located. And the final question, what about hackers? Now, I'll admit, this is kind of a fair question, but there are a few reasons why I'm not too worried about it. The first reason goes back to my last point about the implant being passively powered. The read range on RFID tags is extremely short, usually about 1 centimeter, and because the implant and its antenna are cylindrical, that range is usually even shorter. That's because of physics stuff we're not going to get into right now, but trust me, that is the case. So in order to hack the device, the hacker would not only need to know that I have the implant, but they would also have to be able to get close enough to me to actually touch the implant in just the right spot before I was able to notice or stop them. And honestly, this just seems a little unlikely. Now, the implant that I'll be getting is the NEXT or Next implant, which is a 2-in-1 chip that has both a low-frequency RFID and high-frequency NFC transponder in it. Of the two, RFID is generally considered a little less secure, but this is usually fine because the only data that it's transmitting to the reader is its device ID. As for the NFC portion of the chip, aside from access control, the only data that I'm going to be putting on there is basic contact information, maybe some links to my YouTube or website, basically a digital business card. But if I want an added layer of protection, I can password protect the ability to write any data to the chip, which would reduce the likelihood that anybody could overwrite the data or lock me out of the chip. All right, so hopefully that covers any of the big questions any of you might have. But if there are any others, let me know in the comments. I'm always down to have a good conversation about technology. Okay, so let's get to the install. Just a warning, I'm about to show a video of the install process. I personally don't think it's too graphic, but there is a pretty big needle and a small amount of blood. So if you're squeamish or don't like needles, you may want to skip to the next part of the video. The kit that I ordered got here pretty quick and came with everything I needed. The implant was preloaded into a sterile injector, along with skin prep, gloves, gauze, and bandages. I also picked up a few extra goodies like a Proxmark 3 that can be used to program the chip and clone other RFID devices. I took the professional installation guide to a few different tattoo shops and talked to the piercers. The first two weren't willing to do the install, but the third agreed and seemed genuinely interested in the process. I've seen a few videos of people performing installations on themselves, but I felt more comfortable having the install done professionally. After all, it's a pretty big needle and it's not something you really want to chicken out in the middle of. But overall, the process wasn't too bad. The pain was minimal, somewhere between a bee sting and someone pinching your hand really hard. And it was all done in under a minute. A few marks on my hand to guide the placement, a needle slid in between the last layer of skin and muscle, and a few drops of blood. Admittedly, I was a little bit paranoid that first day of the install. I found myself scared that the implant was going to slide right out of the open piercing hole, but nothing like that happened and everything healed up pretty nicely. Well, I've had my implant installed for about 2 weeks now. Everything has healed up really nicely and I love it. I've used it basically every day. The very first thing I did was clone my work badge and now I can get in and out of the office using that. I also use the implant to log into my computer. And I've also already started working on setting up a reader to lock and unlock my truck using the implant. So make sure to hit subscribe if you want to see the video when that comes out. But one of my personal favorite uses for the implant is a response that I programmed for when one of my friends inevitably says something pretty dumb.
I'm sorry, but Josh's processing unit is not fluent in dumbass. Please upgrade your intelligence unit and try again later.
Fun stuff, right? So, I know this video is already like 10 minutes long and I promised an interview with Amal Graafstra, and I do plan on delivering on that promise. However, the entire interview was like 45 minutes long, so for the sake of keeping this video relatively short, I am going to cut that down significantly to a few little clips. But I will upload the whole video very shortly for anybody that's really interested in some of the stuff that we talked about. It was a pretty good interview and I enjoyed talking with him thoroughly, and I hope you'll enjoy hearing it. So without further ado, joining me all the way from the other side of the country via webcam and right here in the Neutrino Tech lab, Amal Graafstra. All right, so I've seen you. I mean, you have several implants. I actually did. Is that a new set of stitches I see there in your arm?
Yeah, it is. So actually, and here too.
Oh.
So and then one right here as well. So I just recently.
Okay.
Friday last. So it's been a week, but I had a bunch of stuff moved around. So this one was a prototype that was here in my arm for. It was only supposed to be 30 days, but it ended up being like 4 years. And so I just had that removed, and so checking that out, analyzing it, and probably eventually replacing it with the next like model, basically. And then here, so on my left second metacarpal here, my middle finger, I have a Flex NT, which is a very thin biopolymer thing, and so that's been working great. I could fist bump, readers, and even though I have an XNT here, glass tube in my hand, I wanted to be able to fist bump with either fist. So I put not a Flex 2, but it's like an experimental device. It's an NTAG 213 with a LED integrated in the inductor coil, and then there's some glow powder paint on it as well. So I can like charge it up with a flashlight, and then it glows for a while. And it kicked around on my desk here for a while, and then I was like, well, I'm having this removed, so I might as well put that in here and have that done. And then this is like a needle installation of a prototype, another Biohacking prototype device.
When I first emailed you the very first time, I was trying to decide which implant I wanted to go with, and I was leaning between the Next or the Biohacking Spark, because the idea of that biocryptography just really caught me. But the one thing I was a little concerned with there is it did look like that platform is still a little bit in its infantile stages. And I know you've kind of talked in the past about trying to get that up off the ground. So what's that process like, and what can we expect to see in those devices, and what's available now?
Sure, yeah. So Biohacking was launched in 2018, and at the time the goal was to create the platform that worked with the Spark and a series of services. And the Apex, which interacts with that platform, is part of it. But the interesting thing about the Apex that is due to be released this month or maybe early next month, it also can run autonomous applications that you load into the chip, right? So that's where the autonomy of that's where the OTP authenticator codes go. That's where the PGP encryption comes from. The chip itself, the Apex chip, is able to generate its own crypto keys on chip, meaning like you don't push keys into it. It can generate its own key pairs for public-private keys, meaning we don't have those keys, right? Like the chip itself is the authentication mechanism. And the platform becomes like the pipeline for moving commands and data around. But in terms of services, particularly with the Spark 2, because the Spark 2 doesn't have that autonomous code running capability, the plan was always to create services, as you said, and it is still in its infancy. But this year, 2021, we have a new set of co-founders that have joined the team. So we have now a well-defined timeline for developing those types of things and deploying them. And I think the first thing we're going to be deploying soon is going to be either the computer login service with VivoKey desktop reader, or the VivoKey Vault service. They're both being worked on kind of in parallel right now. I'm just not sure which one's going to get finished first. But the VivoKey Vault service would be similar to like OneLogin or Dashlane or LastPass, that kind of password management. But instead of a master password, there's the chip. So when you load the client and you want to authenticate, you scan your chip, and then that opens the vault. And the vault can store passwords and things, but also we're exploring things like secure file storage, secure images. So like you take a picture of your insurance card or a credit card or loyalty card or whatever, you store those things in the vault as well. So those things are in the immediate, to be developed immediately kind of status.
You were just talking about the VivoKey Apex, which obviously sounds like a pretty cool project, but you've got a couple other things here that I kind of wanted to mention. One of them is more just looks like a little one-off kind of a deal, but I saw the video, and I think it was a custom job that you did where the girl installed a Disney Magic key in her wrist. Now, what's that process like? I mean, I imagine like some of those chips, I haven't pulled apart anything like for the Disney one, but is it a pretty delicate process to extract that out and then make it into an implantable object?
Sometimes, but to be honest, like the Disney Magic Band, it went through a couple iterations, and the latest iteration is a puck design. So it's like a little nugget, and then you can put that nugget into different wristbands, and it kind of becomes a style item, right? So that design, basically I just cracked that open, and then inside there's a PCB and a bunch of components, and there's two parts to it. One is a Bluetooth low energy transponder that basically pings out an advertisement. It has a battery and all that. But separate to that, on the same PCB but totally separate, is a passive transponder. And that passive transponder is the thing that's used when you tap the Magic Band against the little Mickey reader, right? So I looked at that and I said, okay, well, there's the chip. Pulled it off, desoldered it from the board and pulled it off and tested it. And it happened to be a Desfire EV1, which is, we make the Flex DF with Desfire EV1s already. So I was like, yeah, I can turn this into an implant, right? So took the chip itself, cleaned it up, put it in through the process, put our antenna on it, our custom antenna, polymerized it, and then shipped it to her. And then it was just that simple. You mentioned solar panels. I did put a solar panel under my skin to test to make sure that it was a possibility, at least on low melanin skin, white skin, and it did work. I mean, it showed promise.
Interesting.
So, but the problem again is like consistency.
All right. Well, Amal, I really appreciate you sitting down, and this has been enlightening to say the least, and enjoy your day, man. Well, I hope you enjoyed that small section of the interview. It was great sitting down with Amal. He's a really cool dude, and I look forward to seeing what he comes up with in the future. And remember, keep an eye on the channel. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. And pretty soon I'll be delivering the full 45-minute interview with Amal, where he gets to talk about some pretty interesting stuff. And that's our time for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Neutrino Tech.